So, hi, Dr. Chanel. Thank you so much for meeting with us today. Um, we are excited to have you and get some information about you and your career. So, if you could just tell me a little bit about your what you do full time, that would be awesome.
Sure. So thanks for having me. Hopefully I can answer all of your questions. So I am a physical therapist. It's like so many thoughts kind of hit me at the same time. So I'm like, where do I start? Okay, so pretty much I work with people who have new injuries or chronic injuries to rehabilitate them and get them back to their prior level, or if it's a chronic injury, just to help them function in society, all as it relates to movement. Um, and so right now I work in an outpatient clinic, and I spend some weekends in inpatient. So I usually have patients that come in from the community during the week, see them for about an hour, and we meet twice or three times a week on a weekly basis.
Awesome. Very cool. Now I'm going to backtrack a little bit because I forgot to ask you. I like to start off my interviews just to connect with like students and what they're doing right now. So if you could tell me something that you've watched recently that was really good on Netflix or whatever, or something that you've read recently that was really good.
I want to be judged, so no. So my husband teases me because he says I like bang bang shoot 'em up movies. Like, I'm not a romance person. I'm not a comedy person. Like I just do action, sci-fi, a lot of military movies. So, and really it's because, this sounds terrible, but like I'm using my brain all day at work. So when I get home, I just want to watch like trash TV, so.
Understandable.
Last thing I watched that was good. I just finished The Boys.
The second season?
Yeah, on Amazon. So I just finished that. So
was it good?
Yeah, I mean, it's very gory, and I made the mistake of watching one time when I was eating, and I can usually handle it before, but now, like, I just have a very sensitive stomach. So
yeah.
And did you say book two, or was it just the movie?
You can do book two. Either
okay.
Or book two.
So I was reading. I actually am now doing audiobooks, which my first audiobook was Michelle Obama's Becoming. I love to read, all the time when I was younger. And then just as life got busier and working full time and having a toddler, it's just been hard to find that time to pick up a book and read. So I used to do audiobooks like on my way to work. So I finished Michelle Obama's Becoming book in May. And then I just started reading this book called Medical Apartheid, which is a pretty interesting book. So it talks about the history of how Black people were used for medical experiments that have really advanced our medical world today. And just, it's horrific, but I just felt like I wanted to read it just to understand, the roots, some part of the roots of, the profession that I'm in. But there were people that were slaves that were sold to doctors, and they were being experimented on without medication. And it's just really horrific. I wouldn't recommend it if you're not in a good space with everything happening right now. I mean, no one is, but it's a pretty heavy read. So that's what I just started.
Very interesting. I mean, it's good to know our history, no matter how, not so great it has been, and how we've moved and evolved past like all of the stuff that we had to go through or endure. But that sounds like a very interesting read. Very cool. Yes. And The Boys, I know I watched the first season and I loved it, but the second season I fell asleep on the first episode, so I have to try again.
Yeah.
But very cool. All right, I'll hop back into it. So, with your responsibilities as a physical therapist, what does a typical day or week look like for you?
So specifically in my setting, I usually start off. So I'll go back to kind of like if I had just started at my job. So, after orientation and all that, I finished school and like I'm here on my first day at my orthopedic outpatient clinic. And so I say orthopedic because there's like different settings that you can get into. So orthopedic deals more with just like muscles and bones. So like if someone had a hip replacement or tore their rotator cuff or, sports injuries, like that's orthopedic. I work for a pretty like variable organization where I have experience in orthopedic and neurological. So neurological is like if somebody had a stroke or brain injury, or we have a lot of people that were born with cerebral palsy and just like kind of helping them get through life and movement. So I actually split my time. I work at 2 different locations, and I work at a orthopedic focused clinic down on Broad and Olney, and a neurological clinic on the other days. It's the same company. I work for Einstein, but I work for their other site in Elkins Park, which deals more with disorders of the nervous system. So typical day, my first day, I would usually get like a packet from the office that would be like someone's new admission papers. It would have a script from their doctor that would have diagnosis, like PT eval for whatever the diagnosis is. So then I would meet with the patient, get a history, talk about when their injury started, or if they have pain, or look at their x-rays and anything related to why they're there, and then get into their goals. So a lot of times in our moving forward with the patient after the eval, we talk about different measurements that we take, and we study in school how different muscles are supposed to move, the appropriate range of motion in each joint, and just everything about the body. So going into an evaluation, we kind of, for the most part, as you become experienced, know what normal values to look for. And then wherever the patient has deficits, you want to kind of make goals to get them realistically to the next level. And that could be affected by their ability to get to that next level, could be affected by 1, how long the injury has been there, 2, their health and lifestyle. So it's always like a correlation between, other health comorbidities, like if somebody's obese, or if they have like asthma or anything else that would like limit their progress. They usually have a lower prognosis, which is just like their ability to get better, versus somebody who might be at a healthier weight, more like physically active, and even younger. So sometimes it's harder for like older people to meet, certain goals for other reasons too, like if they have high blood pressure, diabetes, anything like that. So all that means a lot to me when I'm sitting in front of a patient, but then to them, they're like, I don't care about any of that. So of course to them, that would carry over to my next question would be, what do you want to get out of therapy? And sometimes people are just like, I don't want to hurt anymore, or I want to play with my grandchildren, and, my back goes out every time I get down on the floor. I can't walk up the steps, even, we have other specialties where I have coworkers that are pelvic floor therapists, and, sometimes like sexual intercourse is difficult. So these are things that are meaningful to patients, activities they want to get back to, going back to work. I actually recently had a patient that had a stroke after he was using his Peloton, and his wife found him on the floor, his fiance. And so when this was when I was working in the hospital on one weekend, and his goal was just he's like, you got to get me down the aisle. Like, I'm getting married. Like, I want to walk down the aisle. When I saw him, he couldn't walk. So, so from our end, we're looking at all these medical standards, doing different tests that have been researched over and over again, and trying to find ways to get them to those goals of the medical standards. But to the patient, that means like, let me walk again, let me play sports, let me get back to work, let me pick up my child. So, and then from the evaluation, we just set up our treatment plan based off of that. So there's various exercises, balance exercises, strengthening exercises that we would put like a prescription in their chart that they would start, and then we would progress them each week they come based off of, how they're performing, what their pain level is, really tailoring everything to the patient, finding things that the patient's interested in. I have another colleague who is a pediatric therapist. So, her day is pretty busy and creative, just trying to keep kids entertained while also helping them move better. And then at some point, weeks in, or maybe, it may take 4 visits, it may take 4 months. We do like a reassessment, and then we talk to them about where they are now versus where they are when they first came in. So that's the fantastic, perfect world. The other things that affect the therapy are patients' insurance. So unfortunately, we talk about health disparities, and where I work at on Broad and Olney, it's a lower income area. Access to healthcare isn't as great, as some other areas. And so sometimes patients don't have a lot of visits. One insurance company that I deal with a lot only give like 6 to 8 visits at a time. And it's tough if somebody has a fractured ankle. It's like, well, what am I going to do with 6 to 8 visits? So sometimes that could be frustrating, because as a therapist, I don't get into any of that. I'm not looking into trying to fix your insurance or even deal with insurance or say like, this is what you can come here for. If it was up to me, I'd see the patient forever until they get to their goals. But unfortunately, things like insurance and copays, and even sometimes like the patient's transportation, they may not have somebody to bring them to therapy. All those can limit somebody's like ability to participate.
Okay. So you sound very important.
A whole lot there. Sorry.
No, that was a lot. That was good though. That was very good. So I think my next question for you would be, one, how did you get into the field? And if someone may or may not have known that this type of career was available, like what type of person would be good in this type of field?
Yeah, so I think that what you guys are doing right here is just like really great. When I was growing up, I didn't know anything about physical therapy. I never had physical therapy. It wasn't until actually after I was in college, like after I graduated college, that I found out about the profession. So I went to Westchester University, and my bachelor's was pharmaceutical product development, and I minored in biology. So I've always loved science, but I just didn't know what careers were out there for it. So I thought I was, headed in the direction that I wanted to head into. And the best way you can really learn what you want or don't want to do is just, getting the experience and throwing yourself into it, even if it's something that you don't know if you'd be interested in or wouldn't even see yourself doing. You never know, like, until you actually do it. So I was majoring in pharmaceutical product development, and I did an internship at a pharmaceutical company in Collegeville. And it was interesting in terms of like, the chemistry and the different like research that they were doing at the company. But I'm a people person, and for me, like working in a lab for the rest of my life at that time, I just didn't feel like would be like a gratifying career for me. And people who do that work are so important, contributing to the pharmaceuticals that we have today. And I think obviously, the work is very necessary. It just wasn't, something that I found a lot of fulfillment in. So then I thought maybe I'd get into healthcare, but as I was telling you guys with The Boys season 2, I don't do well with blood. So I was like, do nursing, I'm not going to do anything that involves needles or, blood. So I volunteered at Chester County Hospital. Then I took a job as like a nursing, like CNA, but I wasn't certified. I was just like doing caregiving at like a senior home. And while I was there, I actually met some PTs because I thought, oh, maybe I'll be a PA because tangent. I know we're kind of recording this. So I'm just speaking to the young people. Like you have your thoughts like, oh, when I'm 25, I'm going to get married. I'm going to have 3 kids. And, everything's just like this vision. So because I had that vision, I didn't want to do MD school because my degree was pre-med, but I'm like, oh, I'm going to be in school for like another 8 years. I got to have babies. Ain't nobody got time for that. So I was like, I'm just going to go to PA school, which is a physician assistant. And, they pretty much do the same work like an MD. They write scripts and see patients and do medical diagnoses. And it's 2 years of school. So that's another career if you guys are interested in it. Physician assistant, they make really good money. And it's 2 years of school after a bachelor's degree. But when I was working at the nursing home, I met some PTs just because I was working there and I was asking them about their career. And when I was talking to them about what they do, I was like, oh, this actually is pretty cool. Spending time with patients. I think I know my gifts. Like I'm good at motivating people. I'm good at, just kind of seeing the more optimistic side. And I just saw myself as being that kind of hope for somebody to help them meet their goals. So then I started looking more into the career and shadowing people. And it was something that you know, I've been a PT for 5 years and I've never had a moment where I was like, why did I do this? You know, so I think if I wouldn't have had those random opportunities of working at places just to get my feet wet, I would have never been exposed to it. So definitely, if you're not sure what you want to get into, you know, talk to people. Like I've had mentees over the years, you know, just parents that have reached out to me and been like, you know, hey, my kid may be interested in this. You know, I try to work with my supervisor to have students come shadow me for half a day just to see what I do. Because I'm big, not only just about pushing the career in the profession, but also for people of color. You know, we need more people. I was in a class of 68 in my doctorate program, and I was the only Black girl in the class. So more physical therapists that look like us. And I think that it's a great career. It's very fulfilling, and I think it's awesome. So.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I think that's good for them to know too. Like, so you did a lot of internships and volunteer opportunities. And even when you're in the space of, you might not want this career, you were meeting people as you saw them there. So that's how you got introduced to that career. So definitely making sure you're making those connections and building your network is what I would say. That's awesome though. Now, I was gonna ask what type of problems do you like get into at work, but I think more so like, is it not just because you said you use your brain a lot all day, but is it physical as well? Like, are you carrying people, like picking people up? Is it strenuous?
Yeah, so that depends on the setting. So, and that was another reason why, I mean, you know, as you kind of get more into your career and just like getting older and kind of lining up with things that are a priority to you. So when I first finished school, I worked at a nursing home, and I was 25 when I graduated, and I did a lot at the nursing home of transferring patients, which is very skilled because one thing, you don't want to hurt yourself, you don't want to hurt the patient. So you there's like there's ways that are standard to do everything. And straight out of school, like the nursing home, like getting into all that, like if you do decide to go down the PT route, like I'll leave my information for Miss Gilliam, Mrs. Oh, I'm sorry, what's your last name?
Miss Hall, now it's fine. Okay. They still call me Miss. It's all right.
Okay. I'll leave my contact information because, you know, I'm transparent, and, you know, some settings, like if you work at a nursing home, they're like the highest paying setting. Like working in a school is usually lower paying, or in outpatient is somewhere in the middle. So when I was first out of school working at a nursing home, it was like a high paying thing. So I was like, yes, I'm gonna pay these loans off. But it was at the sacrifice of me, you know, physically, you know, doing a lot of transfers and helping patients walk and lifting and things like that. And just thinking about like preserving myself, preserving my body, and knowing that, you know, I wanted to have children and have, not to say that this would cause you to not have children, but just the time to not be exhausted when I get home every day. I prioritized being in a setting where I wouldn't have to physically work so hard. So when I'm working with my patients in the orthopedic clinic, it's more so just me giving them instruction, and then I have my hands on them, you know, telling them how to do things properly. Problem solving, like, you know, with their form, and performing the exercise, and also, you know, anything if it's like, oh, you know, it actually hurts if I do it that way, you know, just trying to like, it's a lot of problem solving all day with each patient. And sometimes the funniest thing that happens all the time is I'll have a patient come in and they're like, oh, like, my pain is like 8 out of 10 today. And I'm like, what'd you do this week? They're like, nothing. And I'm like, oh, wow. And then, you know, the whole session we get to talking, and then, you know, we're just, you know, talking back and forth. And they were like, yeah, like when I was mowing the lawn on Saturday, I was like, wait, you were mowing the lawn? You know, so like that happens a lot, you know, because things that patients don't think is like a big physical thing actually can, you know, I try to get a clean slate when I work with patients. I'm like, don't do nothing until you come to therapy. Like, just rest at home. Don't try to do anything until I give you to do, because you never know. They're like, oh, like I'm walking on the boardwalk on Sunday and my feet are killing me. And I'm like, okay, well, you were walking on the boardwalk on Sunday and it seemed like you were having a great time. That's great. But, you know, you just walked like 2 miles straight and your ankle is like torn or whatever. So, yeah, but for me in the outpatient setting, I don't do a lot of physical work. But if you were to work in an inpatient setting, like a nursing home or a rehab hospital or acute inpatient setting, it's like a lot of lifting and transfers and stuff. So
got it. Okay, and then for to get into PT school, like what are the requirements?
So PT school, there's a lot of accredited programs all throughout the country. So mostly you want to have a bachelor's degree in some type of science. So it could be biology, chemistry. Each school has their prerequisites. So you need to take like nutrition and 3 psychologies and anatomy and nutrition, or I said nutrition, medical terminology. And usually it's been a while since I think I applied almost like 8 years ago, but at the time I think it was like a 3.5, like 3.3 or 3.5 minimum GPA, but each place has their own minimum requirements for academics, but bachelor's degree is for entry level. There are some schools that have like a transitional program, which is actually the school that I graduated from. So you would start your year as a freshman, and instead of having a 4th year, it would be your 1st year transition of a PT program. So instead of being in school for 7 years, where you have a 4 years bachelor's and 3 years doctorate, you would do 3 years bachelor's. Somewhere in that transition of the 4th year, you're like a new grad student and a graduating senior, and then you have your other 2 years of grad school.
That was at Westchester or you went to PCOM, right? Is that where you went?
Yes, so it was University of the Sciences, but they're partner with PCOM. We had a lot of classes there. So
Okay. So that's good to know too. Did you have to take like GREs or anything like that?
Yes. So I took the GREs, and I'm trying to think, because I think some schools you don't have to take them. And also there's like a national application website called CAPTE, CAPTE. And it's like if you wanted to send your applications to so many different PT schools at once, you would do it through this system and pay like the application fee and all that. But they show in that list of the schools that require like GRE scores versus some that don't, and essays, reference letters, all that. So
okay, what's that website again?
I think it's CAPTE. I'll look it up really quickly. CAPTE. Cool. Yes, the Commission on Accreditation in Physical Therapy Education. So CAPTE.
Thank you.
You can make up a login there, and then apply to schools through that one website. They usually have the list of all the accredited PT schools.
That's good to know. Awesome. Now, do you have to do any sort of continuing education?
Yes. So just for the PT license alone, each state has different ways to kind of meet your requirements. So you can get licenses in multiple states, which our organization, they're still kind of looking at the profession and making changes every year. And right now, like if you guys want to look into another, we have the American Physical Therapy Association, so APTA, and they kind of are spearheading like our profession and regulations and our practice and new laws and Medicare cuts and all that. So with the license, you usually require 30 hours of continued education every 2 years. And so for me, when I finished school, I got my license in New Jersey too, because it's like right over the bridge. I live in Philly, and I was picking up like, extra per diem hours at another hospital. But the sucky thing is New Jersey is on the opposite year of Pennsylvania for their renewal. So I think Pennsylvania is like on the odd number years and New Jersey is on the even number years. So I was like trying to make sure that I made my continued education fit both states so that I wouldn't have to do 60 hours versus 30 hours. Mm-hmm. And then if you have other specialties, there's other requirements. So I actually have an additional specialty in lymphedema management. And lymphedema is pretty much swelling. A lot of my patients that I have usually are after they had breast cancer, where they had surgically their breasts removed, their lymph nodes removed. Their arm just kind of has a difficult time returning fluid, so it's like really large. Or this can happen in the legs too, usually from like any type of heart condition, so not always like cancer related. And sometimes people are just born with bad lymph nodes and they develop it in puberty. So if anybody noticed any swelling in their legs, you know, you can contact me. We can talk about it. But so with my lymphedema certification, I have to do a certain number that I can't remember, but I should probably look it up. But every 6 years, I have to do continued education to maintain that specialty. So.
Okay. Now, do you take classes, or does your job offer like professional development? How do you?
Yeah. So my job, they have like so we call them CEUs, which is continued education units, but our job, MOS Rehab, they do MEUs, MOS education units. So usually they have different specialists come in and they'll host it during our lunch or at a certain time of the day, or they'll have weekend conferences. And sometimes even ourselves, like if I did a presentation a little bit further along, I would have to have my presentation approved by APTA for it to count for these education units. But there's lots of opportunities offered through my employer to get these for us to maintain our license. And some companies that are not attached to any healthcare facility just have their own educational company. So you can do like online CEUs. So Pennsylvania allows you to do all 30 hours online. New Jersey, you have to do 20 hours in person and 10 hours online. So, but there's like, lots of access to all different types of classes, but they have to be approved by Pennsylvania license or whatever the Harrisburg Board of Licensure is to get the credit.
That makes sense. Okay. And I'm seeing a lot of careers, you do have to do some sort of continuing education. I know we have to for our licenses counselors too. So I like to ask that for students, for them to remember, like, you're always going to be a lifelong learner.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's good to hear other professions needing to continue education as well. Now, what do you like most about your job?
Ooh, good question. I don't know. I'm very competitive, so I think I like just proving to the patient that I can help them get better. I know this sounds, I mean, it's a good thing for their benefit, but I'm like, see, I told you we could do it. But all those moments kind of like add up together. I mean, mind you, it's not always, you know, sunshine and, you know, oh, we made it. You know, it's not always like that. Like, there's so many patients that, you know, I'm like, we did our best. I'm sorry, PT isn't the answer. And I have to refer them back to their doctor, which is always tough. I hate when that happens. Even like, I don't think I'll ever get over having to do that. And some places are just like very challenging. Like during the pandemic, we had a lot of shifts in our departments where like a lot of therapists were just moved around because we weren't having a lot of people come in because people were social distancing. So I worked for 6 weeks on the brain injury unit in inpatient, which was my first experience like that. And it's tough because these patients are very cognitively declined. They don't talk. And then you're dealing with like families, like the wife is coming in and like, is my husband ever going to recognize me? Is my husband ever going to talk to me? And sometimes the answer is no. And sometimes it's, you know, we got him to shake his head or we got him to communicate with his eye movement. You know, so even those small moments are great, but then there's also times where it's like tough to tell a family member or tough to tell a patient that this, and, you know, I never say it's unrealistic. I just say it's going to be challenging for us to get there, and I'll do the best that I can. So, but I do love about my job just having those moments where a patient is finding joy in their new abilities, and I think that's what makes it like so fulfilling. And those are the things that kind of make me like, oh, I really like what I do. So
that's awesome. Now it seems like your job encompasses a lot of attributes or skills necessary. So like you're talking to people, but you're also using like science and movement and things like that. So what types of skills would people need for that type of career?
So definitely being good with time management. As I was saying earlier, if I could just dictate, my whole day by myself, I'd probably have people with me all day long, but that's not, realistic. So, which getting into something else, another opportunity for PTs, a lot of PTs open their own clinics. So you can do whatever you want to do pretty much, within your own, financial confines. But I think for, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry.
That's okay.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah. Like what type of skills would be helpful?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So definitely time management. Definitely, I don't know what this skill is called, but I guess maybe like a combination of like wisdom and discernment, because everybody has a role, but when you see, I'm talking, just every healthcare professional, but when you're spending so much time with the patient, like I see my patients maybe 2 or 3 hours a week. So just me and that patient, that's enough time for me to kind of know when they're having a good day, not just physically, but just mentally too. So I've had patients that unfortunately were in, some trauma, like somebody was assaulted sexually, somebody was just in a hit and run, and just kind of dealing with that psych aspect of things. You can't be blind to that, because you want to make sure that you're helping the patient from a holistic approach. If they're still being, binded by whatever mental challenges they're having, you're not going to get much progress from them. And just as a healthcare professional, we had our white coat ceremony in school. We took our oath of do no harm and all that. So you want to make sure that you are doing right by the patient by not just saying, oh, I'm a physical therapist, I'm only going to focus on your muscles. But, another patient I had was having issues. She had a stroke and has some memory issues, and her okay. All right. Sorry. So I was just saying, like, when you are with a patient, you just kind of want to look at them from the whole. So definitely like time management, just having that discernment, being creative, being patient, being an effective communicator, so many things. I just kind of, I guess overall being, a great person. So, if you know how to communicate and have conflict resolution and all that, I mean, it's going to be tough sometimes. Sometimes you think about like burnout and just, you're interacting with so many people, so many backgrounds, so many personalities. And there's been days like, because not all my patients are great. Some of my patients, every now and then they're like, I don't know why I'm here. Like, what are you going to do for me? And I'm like, then why are you here? Go home. But I can't tell them that. So sometimes I do have to like go in the bathroom and take a couple of deep breaths. But, just being like professional. I think things that kind of help me with that, because for the most part, those are what they'll interview you for when you're going to PT school too. They ask about all these things like scenarios where you had conflict, blah, blah, blah. So any career, volunteer opportunities or leadership opportunities that you can get into now will definitely help you develop those skills. Like I think me being like, I was a RA at Westchester, and then I worked as a student leader at Westchester, and even being on the gospel choir, just getting involved in those things. If you don't have opportunities where you're interacting with people, or if you're like working on a project with people, it's going to be tough for you to really make it in the career, because that's what you're doing all day. I have my own patients, but sometimes I work with like an occupational therapist or a speech therapist, and even the physician, to talk about, okay, how should we move forward with this patient? The social worker too, we're all working together for the interest of the patient. And if you're not good as a team player, it's going to be tough for you to really do your job effectively. So
that's awesome. No, I think those are all great. I'm writing a couple of them down just so I can talk about them in a later date. If you have any, I know we're about to wrap up. Do you have anything that you wanted to share, like for students who may or may not be interested in the career, or just to help them with figuring out what it is they want to do with the rest of their lives? They're all freshmen in college right now.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So I would just say, like, definitely contact me. Like, don't be afraid. Just say like, oh, I saw that video that Mrs. Not Gilliam posted. So I was like, I didn't hear what you said your last name was, but Hall, I know this. Oh my God. So Mrs. Hall posted, sorry, I'm going to say pregnancy brain, but goodness, it's been that for years. Okay. But just say, I saw the video, and,
I am like an open book, you know, email me and I'll talk to you about whatever. Like, I'll see if we can, I mean, I don't know how things are now at my job with like COVID and everything, but if I could set up a time for either us to talk or Zoom, or even for you to come into the job for a couple of hours, like, I'm saying a lot of stuff. I talk a lot. And I feel like hopefully you get something out of everything that was said, but I think it's even better when you can actually like go and see for yourself. So, my best advice is just kind of keep yourself open to opportunities. Don't be afraid to reach out to people, ask for what you want, because you are in charge of, you know, where you go from here. So it's not going to be like somebody reaching out like, hey, do you want to do this? Unless you've expressed interest to that person. But wherever you want to go, you have to be bold enough to take those steps and move yourself forward. So, and, you know, it'll be great.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to meet with us and share all of those lovely gems that you share with us. I'm interested in the career, and I didn't even know about it. So it's good to hear.
Thank you. You were the first physical therapist I've ever heard from, like, in my life.
Oh, wow. Great.
A lot of the information
hopefully
was
you
great.
never get hurt, but if you do, just hit me up. Yeah, but thank you so much for having me. This is really great, and hopefully will I be able to see the recording? I just like to watch.
Yeah, I can send it to you.
Oh, girl, why you say that? So okay.
No,
cool.
I can send it to you.
All right.
Yep, I'll
yeah,
send
it
it
was
to you.
great.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, take care.